And welcome to the third in a three-part series on some bad ideas from philosophy that made it big. They escaped from the university and caused a lot of trouble. Ideas that worked their way down into culture, down into not just things we think, but the ways we think, not just things we think about life, but the way we think about life, those paradigms that shape how we think, those things that control how we perceive the world without even necessarily rising to the level of consciousness, where we can look at the ideas and realize that it's possible to question them and that they are, in this case, bad philosophy. The water the fish swims in, not even realizing that it's there. That's what we're talking about here. Here is one idea, a third idea in this series, that came from philosophy and is bad philosophy and has been highly influential. And it's something that's taught as fact in schools all the time, and it's absolute balderdash. So what we're looking at here is hopefully a screen that's well ordered. Zoom has been abusing me today, but the last video in this series, I managed to successfully record, and I don't think Zoom did much to screw it up. I hope it's not screwing this up and giving you a huge gray box in the middle of the screen. Hopefully what you're looking at is my silly face on one side of the screen, and then some nice frangipani flowers. But let's move to some other ones because we had those in the last video. Here's some nice yellow frangipani flowers now. And then on the other side of the screen, most of the screen, we have my ricochet.com post, and it is recommended reading for those interested in these matters, especially if you disagree with me. Read this and see if you can find where I'm wrong. I don't think you will, but you're welcome to try. Now, at this point, I should just go through portions of this post, probably not the whole thing, and see if I can streamline things a little bit, because I'm afraid it's a fairly long post. But this is a really important topic, and we need to do some things to clear it up. Some opinions are facts, and you have been told that opinions are never facts. And that, I think, is simply bad philosophy that needs to be corrected. Bad philosophy causes a lot of confusion. Sometimes bad philosophy is dressed up as theology or science or sociology or law or just English class. C.S. Lewis is great on this, by the way. The Abolition of Man in the, oh, not that book. Well, that I think is good too. I edited this book and wrote the introduction. Not that book. I want The Abolition of Man. The Abolition of Man by C.S. Lewis is a very fine book talking about how bad philosophy poses as your English class. That's also what I'm talking about, and other classes as well. We dress up bad ideas from philosophy as if they're just part of theology or science or sociology or law or English class, or worse, we refer to it as critical thinking, whatever that is. Maybe I should do a video on that later. Oh, I probably did one already in the logic series. Anyway, bad philosophy causes a lot of confusion. Sometimes it's dressed up as something else, and good common sense usually corrects bad philosophy. I'm very much a fan of Thomas Reid, who teaches that sort of thing. Thomas Reid, who wears that funny hat and looks like this in the old paintings of him. Thomas Reid, I agree with him that common sense is an adequate corrective for philosophy, but sometimes you need some philosophy to explain things. And even Reid agrees on that. And I say sometimes bad philosophy ruins common sense on a very broad scale, and sometimes we need some good philosophy as a necessary cure. That, I think, is what happens with the myth that says no opinion is ever a fact. The truth is, opinions and facts are not the same category, but they do overlap. It's a Venn diagram thing. Some opinions are facts, some opinions are not. Some facts are opinions, some facts are not. The opposite of opinion is not fact. This is if you had to do a 1 or 2 sentence summary of everything I'm talking about here, this is it. The opposite of opinion is not fact. The opposite of opinion is knowledge. Now, I'm afraid it does take some time to sort out, and this post can get long. And my suggestion is you might consider reading this post on the internet slowly, or if you're a too long didn't read kind of person, or you're just super busy or something, skim the section headings of this post and look over 1 or 2 sections that seem interesting. The whole post, however, is of course recommended. Now, what is this post? If you Google correcting your miseducation, comma, part 3, colon, some opinions or facts, put that in quotes, you'll probably find this. Or if you can read the URL, ricochet.com/1500472/correcting-your-misseducation-part-3-some-hyphen-facts. And keep this in mind. Some people proclaim that no fact is ever an opinion. And they may say again and again, they may say loudly that they're teaching logic, teaching critical thinking, or law, or science, or something else. But if you say that no fact is ever an opinion, you are doing one thing and one thing only. You're doing philosophy, and that's fine with me, but you're doing it badly, and that's not fine with me. Now, what's wrong with it? The dictionary is a good place to start. The word fact can refer to how things are, to reality, or it can refer to statements about reality, and that's what we're talking about here. Now, what about the word opinion? The general idea of the word opinion is a belief that is not knowledge. Once again, the opposite of opinion is not fact. The opposite of opinion is knowledge. Merriam-Webster defines opinion in these ways. I got to streamline some things. I'll read one of them. Belief stronger than impression, but less strong than positive knowledge. That's the definition of opinion from there. Dictionary.com, a belief or judgment that rests on grounds insufficient to produce complete certainty. Cambridge Dictionary, a thought or belief about something or someone, or a judgment about someone or something. Oxford English Dictionary, what or how one thinks about something, judgment or belief. Now, we can totally have views, judgments, beliefs, or appraisals about how things are. We can even have judgments, beliefs, views, or appraisals that fall short of knowledge about how things are, but are still accurate. And facts are correct statements about how things are, and opinions are judgments about how things are that are made without complete knowledge. And of course, those two things overlap. Some opinions are, well, sometimes the word opinion means something best known by experts. And sometimes opinion falls short of knowledge because we just don't have that kind of knowledge and we only have opinions, or we just don't have certainty, we only have opinions. And some opinions are even personal views, but none of that means that they're not facts. It does mean opinions are not the same thing as public common knowledge, but many opinions are facts when the experts are right, or when a personal view is correct, or when a view with insufficient grounding to be knowledge is nevertheless correct. I may believe many things that are true and not know them just because I'm not believing them based on enough evidence. I just have an opinion, but it's a correct opinion. This is a ridiculous example, but maybe I'll use it anyway. I remember when in high school, some friends were telling me that Rush Hour, the movie Rush Hour, starring Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker, was in fact starring Chris Rock. They were telling me Chris Rock starred in Rush Hour. And I was pretty sure that wasn't true. I just couldn't remember who was actually in Rush Hour. It wasn't Chris Rock, but I had no idea the name Chris Tucker. It didn't come back to me until many days later. So I had a correct opinion that it was not Chris Rock. But did I have a knowledge that it was not Chris Rock? Can you call it knowledge if you can't remember? No, it's actually Chris Tucker. Yeah, maybe you can if you have enough knowledge of Chris Rock. That's not a good example. I shouldn't have used that example at all. Whatever, let's move on. Some opinions are knowledge. Sorry, some opinions are facts if they are a true belief that's not known because you're believing it without good evidence, even though I totally failed to give you a good example of that. Sorry. Other opinions are fact claims that are just wrong. Like the opinions of my friends when they said it was Chris Rock in Rush Hour. There, I'll give you an example of that one at least. Some opinions may not even be fact claims, like your personal preference for one kind of ice cream over another. Is that an opinion? Sure. I want to disagree with you calling that an opinion. Is it even a fact claim? Probably not, if it's just a personal preference. Here's an opinion that is either a fact or an inaccurate fact claim. George Washington never visited Paris. Now, that's my opinion, based on the fact that everything I can remember about George Washington's life is something that happened in North America. I can remember a few things about Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson that I think actually involved them specifically going to Paris, but I could totally be wrong. And if I were to research the life of George Washington, pick up a biography and read it, I could easily confirm possibly that I'm correct, and then my opinion is elevated to knowledge by finding some good evidence. Or maybe it's refuted and I find out my opinion was wrong. Then it would be a fact claim and false. But maybe it's a fact claim and true. I don't know. You can ruin this for me in comments if you like by saying I have studied the life of George Washington. He definitely did / did not go to Paris. Now, what about opinions that cannot be confirmed or refuted? Like you could probably confirm or refute whether George Washington ever went to Paris. Well, there's our Venn diagram here. That's the truth there, that Venn diagram. What about, though, opinions that can't be confirmed or refuted? Well, either they're making fact claims or they're not. If they are, then they're just about things that are difficult to know. If they're not making fact claims, well, then they're not making fact claims. I never said all opinions are fact claims. Venn diagrams, there's something in all three regions. There are opinions that are not fact claims at all. There are opinions that are fact claims, and there are fact claims that are not opinions. And let's try to go a little faster with some of this material. Some opinions are facts that not everyone knows. No one knows all the facts. That's why opinions happen. That's why opinions about how things are happen. And they happen all the time because not everyone knows everything. But sometimes we still have beliefs about things that we don't necessarily know about. And sometimes those beliefs are true, and sometimes they're not. And many times they are at least claims about what is true, which means fact claims, maybe inaccurate ones, maybe accurate ones. Now, there is such a thing as a dictionary definition that excludes opinion from fact. The Cambridge one says, gives this definition of fact: something that is known to have happened or to exist, especially something for which proof exists or about which there is information. Now, this definition limits facts to things known, but it's an incomplete definition. It does not cover facts no one knows, like there's a truth about how much my teacup weighs at sea level in ounces to the 8th decimal point. There's a fact about that, but no one knows what is that fact. No one has ever bothered to figure it out, and probably no one ever will. This is a narrow definition, which I find rather annoying, this definition of fact from Cambridge here. And even though it annoys me, I can't complain about it too much. Narrow definitions happen, and they have their uses. Now, facts and opinions overlap, but we are not told that. So now, in my Ricochet post, I have a long section going over some of the false teachings about facts and opinions, or a very small number of the same teachings, but they come up in a lot of places. There are some things you find in Google. I have a URL here. I guess I'll click on it. mometrics.com/academy/fact-or-opinion, stating that opinions are neither true nor false, saying that you can potentially agree with or disagree with a statement of opinion, and saying that facts are not debatable. Now, here's an interesting fact. You can totally disagree with statements of fact. People do it all the time. God exists. Trump broke the law. Trump did not break the law. God does not exist. Stuff about the 2020 election, global warming, stuff about global warming, stuff about macroevolution. Have you noticed people disagree about this stuff? There is a terrible, terrible example in this particular URL that we clicked here, the Mometrics or whatever it was. World War II is a terrible war. They say that that is a matter of opinion, not a fact. And justifying their claim, they say, yes, most people would consider World War II terrible. However, there's always the possibility that someone out there holds a different opinion, as strange as that may seem. In other words, if there is anyone anywhere who disagrees, in fact, if there's merely a possibility of a person disagreeing, then a statement is thereby rendered non-factual. Now, you know what that means? That means there's no fact about anything we don't know yet. There's no fact about anything we might never know. And in fact, there's no fact in science because everyone disagrees on something. Every scientific claim is something someone disagrees on and something someone could disagree on. Even for math, we are capable of error, and therefore we are capable of disagreement. Capable of error and therefore capable of disagreement. And even our least common remaining moral understanding, which states that Hitler was wrong, is thereby rendered an opinion. Science and morality likewise, because it's possible to disagree with that. I dare say even these days some Nazis do. But at any rate, Hitler disagreed with that. So there you go. And that's still not an opinion. These guys have the wrong definition of fact. They seem to think that value claims are always, or almost always, opinions rather than fact. They say it's very rare for a statement with the value word like terrible to be factual, they say. Well, that doesn't mean Well, that does mean something, but it's incorrect. Let me just disagree with it rather than fancily saying does or doesn't mean something. If a student copies an entire paper from Wikipedia, I can say factually that that student did a terrible job on the assignment. I can also say Shakespeare is better than the Twilight Saga. That is a fact. Also, I can say Hitler is wrong. I can say overspending policies by the American federal government are very foolish. I can say Beethoven is better than Justin Bieber. I can say this particular website's explanation of facts and values shows very unclear thinking. And those are all fact statements. Also, they're correct. And note that the views of this website are actually self-contradictory. Truth, fact, and accuracy are all evaluative categories. You can't even say that a statement is correct without affirming the value of truth and measuring a statement according to the value it holds in virtue of it being true. That's what it means to recognize that a statement is true. Now, that was just the first thing that turned up on Google when I was typing all this up. But there are other sources that are just as bad. Yourdictionary.com. A fact is an objective piece of information that can be proven true or false. An opinion doesn't need to be based in reality, but can be supported by evidence. And they give only evaluation statements as examples of opinion. But this is ridiculous. If something can be proven false, it's not a fact. They should have said fact claim or fact statement. But let's keep going. By that definition, you can't even claim that I am wrong about facts and opinions. If you tried, you'd be evaluating my words and therefore stating an opinion rather than a fact, in which case I would not be wrong, and so on. These false teachings are easily refutable, and good heavens, they're everywhere. There's a Wikipedia article that, at least at the time I typed all this up, was a mess and said an opinion is a judgment, viewpoint, or statement that is not conclusive, rather than facts, which are true statements. And said all this other stuff. I don't think I'm going to read this. There's some things in this that are not so bad. It's true that opinions may deal with subjective matters, for example. But the Wikipedia article implies, without clearly stating it, that facts are facts and opinions are evaluations and they never meet. And it explicitly states that all facts are verifiable, which is an error, which I go over 2 videos back. And it states that a consensus of experts makes a fact. But then what about those times when the expert consensus is wrong? That happens. Errors are not facts. They are still errors. They might be rational errors. They might be errors well supported by evidence, because some evidence is fallible. They might be errors supported by experts, or even by a consensus of experts, because experts are also fallible. At least most of them. There are religious issues to discuss if we had all the time in the world. Is the correct minority view not a fact just because it's a minority opinion? How could a correct view be non-factual? That doesn't make any sense. That's crazy. And so on. And I will just skip over a few other sources documented in this thing. Oh, why be thorough? We can't be thorough. These false teachings are everywhere, and they're often very easy to refute. Houghton Mifflin, Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. I hope that's the correct definition, correct pronunciation. Incorrectly states that all facts can be verified. Incorrectly states that an opinion is an expression of belief about something. It might not be inaccurate as far as it goes, but we express beliefs that are facts all the time. I believe Earth orbits the sun. I believe mosquitoes spread the malaria protozoa. Protozoum. I believe guinea pigs are mammals. I believe Beethoven is better than Justin Bieber. Those are all fact claims. Those are also my beliefs. That doesn't mean their opinions are not facts. It means they are opinions if I don't happen to have enough knowledge of the subject for them to be knowledge. Then they're just opinions, because once again, the opposite of opinion is not fact. The opposite of opinion is knowledge. And they say facts are not debatable, which is ridiculous. We debate things in science, economics, all the time. In fact, here's a little secret. If you don't know this, it's a secret hiding in plain sight. People disagree on things in math all the time. I have no idea what they disagree about, but it happens because there is such a thing as a mathematics PhD. You can't get a PhD in mathematics without disagreeing with some scholars in mathematics. I don't know what they find to disagree on. It's got to be something epically advanced in the study of math, but there are disagreements in math. Otherwise, there wouldn't be PhDs in math. The sources of this errant teaching are given away by the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt website, stating that facts rely on observation or research and generally involve empirical data. particularly physical sense stuff, and opinions are based on assumptions that can't be proven. In other words, the supposed dichotomy of facts versus opinion is once again the dichotomy of fact versus value, corrected in the last video and also in this Ricochet post currently visible on your screen. And it's all rooted in one other thing that we'll probably get to again, but I'll tell you now. I think it's all rooted in the idea that knowledge is inherently what is verifiable. Again, it's the logical positivists screwing everything up as usual. And if you don't know what I mean, keep watching or go back and watch the earlier videos in the series. Oh, if you don't know where to find them, check the Philosophy Myths playlist and you'll probably find them there. I think that's where I'll put these 3 videos. Now, let's look at the most important reason facts overlap with opinions. All we need to do is pay attention to the plain meaning of statements of opinion. Now, this won't work easily with just any statement of opinion, but here's a good example. Italian opera is terrible music. This is a fact claim. That should be enough, but we can do a little more. Now, maybe all musical value is subjective or something like that, but that's not the end of it. What if I said to you, Italian opera is terrible music, and you said, no, it isn't? Those are direct contradictions. That means one is true and the other is false. And it's not debatable that one of them is true and the other is false. Even if the value of music were entirely a matter of subjective preference, if there were no facts about the value of music, the statement that Italian opera is terrible music would be false, and the denial of that statement would be true. There's no avoiding the contradiction in that conversation. That's how knowledge works. That's how language works. That's how logic works. Now, there is a real difference of opinion here, because those are fact statements. You can disagree about fact statements. You can't actually disagree about mere personal preferences. I can already hear the objections. I can imagine people saying, that's not what those sentences mean. They're just expressing personal taste. Well, the objection is mistaken. I don't know how much I need to say to prove that it's mistaken, but I can certainly say those sentences have meaning and their meaning is plain. The delusion that they do not have that plain meaning appears to be the product of, again, logical positivism, the most foolish and egregiously mistaken philosophy in human history. More on that a little further down. Keep watching, keep reading if you're reading this. There is a better objection in the area, though. If you say, Mark, when you say that Italian opera is terrible music, you don't actually mean it literally. What you mean is that Italian opera does not please you. And someone who disagrees with you means to say that it does please him. Now, this is somewhat better, but it's still a lousy objection. Be assured that if I should happen to say that Italian opera is terrible music, and I'm not joking, maybe I could joke about these things, but if I say it, I'm going to mean it. 99 times out of 100, I won't say that unless I mean it. As long as the sentence has its meaning, the existence of a sentence with that meaning is enough to make the point. There are fact statements that are evaluation statements. That's what the sentences mean. As long as they have their meaning, as long as anyone says them and means them literally, which I would, then that's all you need to know. Also, that's a hard example because I don't actually want to say that about Italian opera. I don't know anything about opera. I have no taste for opera. I wouldn't even know the value of opera if there is any. I can understand the value of Tolkien very well. I can tell you, I think Tolkien is the greatest literature ever written in human history. That's what The Lord of the Rings is. And I state that as a fact claim. I'm not telling you how much I enjoy it. I'm telling you, I think it is factually, objectively, the best literature in human history, The Lord of the Rings. As long as such sentences have their meaning, as long as there's any disagreement about them, even if you think there is no factual value to literature, you're still disagreeing with me when I say that there is and make a fact statement about it. Tolkien is the best. Contradictory differences of opinion do exist, and that means there are factual statements of opinion. Maybe mine, maybe yours. Now, you can't tell me I'm the only one whose evaluations overlap with fact claims. Again, we can go with simpler things like Hamlet is a great play. Beethoven makes better music than whoever was at the top of the chart last week. Massive uncontrolled debt is bad. The Godfather was a better movie than Sharknado 6, though I do enjoy Sharknado movies. And Darth Vader is maybe saying this a little bit wrong. Search your feelings, you know it to be true. No, I say search your thoughts. You know this to be true. You know, I think. I sure hope you know. And if you don't, well, read this and try to get some better thoughts. Hamlet is a great play. Beethoven makes better music than whoever's at the top of the charts last week, et cetera, et cetera. These are fact statements. Now, it doesn't even make any sense to categorize evaluations as non-facts. In math, for example, we can say that an answer is correct or incorrect. That's an evaluation. We can say that English grammar is good or bad. That's an evaluation. The statement, that's a fact, is an evaluation. If every evaluation is a non-fact, then you can't even consistently say that I'm wrong about facts and opinions. If you say I'm wrong, you're evaluating my words. And therefore, according to you, you're stating an opinion rather than a fact. You cannot disagree with me on this without contradicting yourself. You cannot consistently say that I'm wrong about this. Also, you can't even disagree on non-fact statements. People disagree all the time about opinions. Here's C.S. Lewis making the point in The Abolition of Man. Until quite modern times, all teachers and even all men believed the universe to be such that certain emotional reactions on our part could be either congruous or incongruous to it. Believed, in fact, that objects did not merely receive but could merit our approval or disapproval, our reverence or contempt. The reason why the poet Coleridge agreed with a tourist who called a waterfall he was looking at sublime, but disagreed with someone who merely called it pretty, the reason was that he believed inanimate nature to be such that certain responses could be more ordinate or appropriate or just or accurate or fitting than others. He believed that the tourists thought the same, and they did. The man who called the waterfall sublime was not intending just to describe his own emotions about it. He was also claiming that the object merited his emotions. And if they did not merit, if the waterfall did not merit his emotions about how the waterfall was sublime, then there was no disagreeing at all. You can't disagree with a statement that a waterfall is sublime. Maybe we should use the frangipani flowers. I think frangipani flowers can be just lovely. So someone might look at these frangipani flowers on the screen and replicate the conversation Lewis is talking about, where the poet Coleridge is looking at a waterfall and he hears one tourist say, the waterfall is pretty. And Coleridge thinks, no, it's not pretty, it's sublime. Or maybe another tourist said it was sublime. And Coleridge agreed with that one rather than the one who said it was pretty. So you might look at the frangipani flowers and say, yeah, they're pretty. And someone else might say, no, they're beyond pretty. They're so beautiful, they're sublime. And a third person might agree or disagree with one of those assessments. But you can't disagree or agree about mere statements of feeling. You can only disagree about facts. Lewis, to disagree with this is pretty if those words simply described feelings would be absurd. If she had said, I feel sick, Coleridge would hardly have replied, no, I feel quite well. When people disagree in their evaluative opinions, that means there's a fact claim there. Now, there is a New York Times article from 2015, Why Our Children Don't Think There Are Moral Facts, by a philosopher named Justin McBrayer, who I thought did a good job on this topic. And I recommend finding that article and reading it. McBrayer explains that public schools are to blame. He also did some online work, much like I did above, and I quote him a bit. I think he does a fine job exposing the folly of the teaching that facts and opinions never overlap, and his article is recommended reading. Now, why do we get confused about facts and opinions? Besides the influence of bad philosophy, why do we get confused? Well, there is a distinction to be made between basic facts and interpretation of basic facts, and those are never the same. I don't know if it's famous, the well-used line, just the facts, ma'am, the sort of thing a police would say to a witness of a car accident or a bank robbery, saying, don't say who you think did it, just report the facts as you saw them, just the facts, ma'am. Or a judge says to a witness in court. This line is getting at this distinction. There are basic facts, and there are interpretations of the facts, which are opinions, and sometimes they are not facts. But here's a good medical example. Say I have a few symptoms, I tell a doctor about them, I'm giving the basic facts. Then the diagnosis the doctor makes is an interpretation of the symptoms. And that interpretation is an interpretation of the basic facts. And maybe it's a matter of opinion. And something depends on the interpreter. And a good doctor is a more reliable interpreter than others. But the correct opinions will still be facts. I either do or don't have a sinus infection. The correct interpretation of the fact is still a fact, but there's still a very important distinction between a basic fact and an interpretation of the basic facts. And I think this is part of why we sometimes get confused about facts versus opinions. Now, there is still a very important distinction between fact and opinion. It matters. And you need to distinguish in particular opinion from knowledge. Once again, the opposite of opinion is not fact. The opposite of opinion is knowledge. Every fact definitely is a fact, and opinions may not be, and sometimes rather often they are not the same thing as a fact, and we have to keep that in mind. But the real way to keep this distinction properly in mind is to distinguish opinion from its true opposite, which is knowledge, not fact. And I'll skip over the Ben Shapiro conversation with Glenn Greenwald, where I think he says some things pretty well. I'll skip over some things Michael Knowles said that were good. And my philosophy is the one that preserves facts. A few times I've tried to explain facts and opinions overlap, and some people seem to be annoyed at my explanations. I could never fully understand why, but I at least got this impression. Maybe I shouldn't say I'm addressing what they thought. I can address only my impression of what they thought because I couldn't figure out what they were thinking. But if I was correct in my perception that they were annoyed, and if what they were thinking was what my best guess is, they were thinking that I was touting some sort of philosophy that erases facts. Please let me assure you, no, it's the freaking exact opposite of that. If I say that there's no separation of fact from opinion, you might think I'm saying anything can be a fact. I'm touting some form of relativism. It's the exact opposite of that. If no opinion is a fact, every time someone has an opinion about something, there's no fact about the matter. If no opinion is a fact, the fact that people have opinions about the evils of Nazism or racism, or about the existence or non-existence of God, or about evolution or global warming, or about vaccines, or even about the shape of the earth, people have opinions about this. And if no opinion is a fact, then there is no fact about any of those things, not even a simple thing about the shape of the earth. If some opinions are facts and if some are not, if no opinions are knowledge, then facts are facts, whether we believe them or not. And opinions are our beliefs about the facts when we don't know them for sure. Let me go over that again. If some opinions are facts, correct. Some opinions are not facts, correct. And if no opinions are knowledge, correct, then facts are facts, whether we believe them or not. Opinions are our beliefs about the facts when we don't know for sure. That's the truth. And that's the philosophy that preserves facts. That's the philosophy that avoids relativism. The claim that no facts or opinions, that is what leads to relativism. Now, if you want to get technical, there are some facts that depend on what we believe, facts about things that are affected by our beliefs. It's a William James thing. Let's move on. Now, why is it such a problem to say that no facts or opinions? Well, it leads to relativism. I just told you. But there is more. This is usually something people do in ethics and religion first, rather than in physics or economics or botany or whatever. The idea that no opinions are facts trains us to move from people have different opinions on moral questions to there are no moral facts, which is a terrible mistake. I don't think we're doing it consciously. I think we're trained to think that way without even realizing we're thinking it. We assume it, but we hardly ever think it consciously. Hence the theme of this whole series. There are bad ideas from the philosophers that corrupt our minds without our usually even recognizing that they're in our minds. And that leads me to the question then, where did this idea come from? I think what we're dealing with here is the lingering cultural influence of logical positivism. There is a myth that says no opinions are facts, and that myth seems to be the offspring of two other myths, that all facts can be verified and that no value claims are fact claims. In other words, the myths explored in the two previous videos in this series. As usual, we can blame logical positivism for a whole lot of things. And before logical positivism, we can blame Hume. So here's A.J. Ayer, a logical positivist. Logical positivism is the worst error in the history of philosophy. Logical positivists say that every meaningful statement about the world can be verified. Logical positivism is wrong, just to give the one single biggest reason, because there are meaningful statements about the world that cannot be verified. And in particular, there are those statements about the world that we rely on when we verify. Maybe I'll spell out those statements just for a moment. I want to go to this one. Here are two principles we rely on when we verify things about the world. And there's no avoiding relying on at least one of them. You can take one and prove the other, and then you can go verify things. But you can't verify. You can't avoid assuming one of them in a way that is quite independent of science and in general of empirical reasoning. One of these things must be independent of verification. Verification relies on it, certainly not the other way around. Principle one, principle of induction. We can learn about what we have not experienced from what we have. Principle two, the uniformity of nature, the principle of the uniformity of nature. The fundamental laws of physics are always the same. You must assume one of these things. You really have to assume both of them to do verification of anything, to learn about the world from experience. But you could prove one from the other. But one of them has to be unjustified, at least as far as verification and science are concerned. They're assumed by verification. They're not given to us by verification. Logical positivism, I think, is the source of the modern myths that all facts are verifiable or provable, and that no value claims are factual. And these myths are all over the absurd teaching that says no facts are opinions. And I think they all came from the same place. I'm just connecting ideas here, though. I can't vouch for the history of this. If I had all the time in the world, I could maybe study a couple million pages of educational materials from the last 2 centuries and maybe confirm this. Someone could write a good book on that, but I'm too busy for that. But I can tell you who refutes this stuff. See above. See more stuff in this post. Also see earlier posts in this series or videos in this video series. Also, I have here this nice introduction to some critiques of logical positivism put to inspiring superhero music, but I also explain the basics in prose with some brevity and I hope some clarity. And, well, at last, that is all. I'll say one more time the one sentence or 2 sentences, depending on whether you use a semicolon. The opposite of opinion is not fact. The opposite of opinion is knowledge.